and welcome to everyone joining us today. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on what time zone you're in. I'm Laurie Burns McRobbie. I'm First Lady Emerita and University Fellow at Indiana University, and more importantly to today, I'm co-chair of the Internet to Inclusivity Initiative. I2I was started about 8 years ago to focus community conversations and actions around diversity, equity, and inclusion in the advanced research and education networking community and beyond. So today's webinar is in keeping with those. It continues our goal of highlighting women and individuals in historically marginalized groups who are leading organizations and projects across the Internet to membership and beyond, and our goal of engaging in meaningful discussions of what we can all do to advance DEI in our communities, our working communities and our personal communities. It's especially appropriate that we are gathering today because it is Ada Lovelace Day. As I'm sure you all know, Ada was a 19th century mathematician and, genius, who is credited with conceiving the power and promise of the very earliest calculating engines, in effect, writing the first algorithm. Ada Lovelace Day began in 2009 and is now an international event with programs happening literally all over the world. And in fact, I just came from an Ada Lovelace Day celebration here in Bloomington, Indiana. We are also gathering 18 months into the COVID-19 pandemic, a disruptive force unlike anything probably any of us have ever experienced, and unfortunately continue to experience. We want to focus today's conversation not only on the general experiences of the women leaders who are on our panel, but also how they have managed through these recent challenges and how it has affected them and their workforces, and their personal lives as well. COVID isn't the only challenge, of course. Technology marches on, requiring continued agility and creativity. And there is, of course, heightened urgency for our efforts to attract, retain, and support a diverse staff. This really will be a conversation, and we invite you to drop your questions and comments in the chat as we go, and we'll have some time at the end to address those questions. So I am delighted that we have 4 women leaders with us today. And I think we've got a screen with their names on it. I'll read them off, and then we're going to ask them to say a little more about themselves. Sue Workman, who's CIO at Case Western Reserve University in Ohio. Jeanne Casares, who's the CIO at the Rochester Institute of Technology in New York. Cindy Leavitt, who is CIO at the Ohio State University, and Dr. Anne Milkovich, who's CIO at the Nevada System of Higher Education. Welcome to all of you. And I'm going to start by asking Sue, reverse alphabetical order, to kick us off by saying a few more words about yourself and your background.
Thanks. I never get to go first. So, it's awesome. So I'm Sue Workman. I am the Vice President of University Technology and Chief Information Officer at Case Western Reserve University. I have been here for 7 years and have really enjoyed the challenges in this job, and there have been many. And then the 23 years before I came here, I was at Indiana University and really had a great time there. And before that in private industry at Hewlett Packard. So I have, I've experienced a lot of things over time and have a lot of advice most likely, but I will go ahead and pass it on to one of my panelist mates here.
Okay. Anne, how about you next?
Sure, happy to introduce myself a little bit. I'm Anne Milkovich. I'm CIO from the Nevada system, and we have 8 institutions in the Nevada system. And I've been here for about 3 years. Prior to this, I was in the Wisconsin system at Oshkosh for 4 years, and 6 years at Montana State University. I did not come up through a technical track to become CIO. I never thought I would be CIO, but here I am. So I overcame some obstacles and surprised myself and a few other people as well. Happy to be here.
Always good. Surprise others in a good way, right? Cindy, over to you.
Sure, happy to be here. So my name is Cindy Lovett. I am the Vice President and CIO at The Ohio State University, and I am 4 weeks into this job. So very, very new here. Happy to be here. The previous 5 years, I was the CIO and Vice President at Temple University of Philadelphia. And I have 30 plus years, too many to count, in IT, and that spans, been at three, actually this is my fourth higher ed, in addition to Temple and Ohio State. I also worked at University of Michigan and UC Davis. And then I also worked for high-tech firms, both Novell and 3Com, and a couple others in there. So that's me.
Welcome. And Jeanne.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeanne Casares. I'm the Chief Information Officer at Rochester Institute of Technology in upstate New York. And I'm thrilled to be here today. And like Anne, I did not come up a technical path. Undergrad, I was a history liberal arts major who kind of found the internet in 1985 when everyone in the company I worked at said, what's that www.what.com? And I kind of fell into technology back in the late 80s, early 90s. And here I am in a technology university, which I absolutely love and have had great and engaging work. I did spend about 15 years in corporate America at a payroll company, Paychex Payroll, where I worked in IT. And so it's been a great career path for me as well.
Wonderful. Thank you all. I should perhaps just add very briefly that my own path was also maybe similarly unusual. I started out as a liberal arts major and fell into computing in the early 80s when the first internet protocols were being standardized, and it was a pretty exciting time. And I just got bitten by the bug, so to speak, and stayed with it. And in fact, worked at Internet 2 up until about 2007, when my husband became president of Indiana University, and a sort of different path opened up, let's just say. I didn't want to leave my tech career completely behind, so I've been very involved in a number of women in tech activities at Indiana University. And in my post First Lady role, I'm continuing to do that, and of course, staying involved with I2I. So let's just start by talking about, a member of you mentioned you had some very interesting career backgrounds, and Sue in particular, you made note of some of the twists and turns. I think you've all had those, and I wonder if we can start by just talking more about what you have encountered along the way, particularly being a female in a relatively male environment, and what strategies you employed to overcome those challenges. And I think maybe this time we'll go in the other direction. And Jeanne, maybe you want to kick us off.
It is work now?
Yep.
Well, thank you. That was so
Thank you.
fast. I appreciate your effort.
No problem. How's everything else?
And
I'm just
again,
wondering if
yes,
everybody else could put their mute on. I could hear some background noise.
You too. Take good care of you.
So I didn't come up a traditional path. I was fortunate enough to be raised in a family where we were taught to be confident. And I think that's been a big thing that has carried me through. And I know not everyone has the same start in life. And it's been one of the things through my own journey that in working with other women, especially women in technology, is to really help people try to find and exercise that muscle. I mean, when we were kids, my parents called the local park the Vena Park. We thought it was our park. That's how confident we were in who we were. But I tried to carry that into my career and into my life. And I started in higher education, actually in student affairs, worked at University of Michigan, Syracuse University. And I left higher education because there was a sloppiness to how work was completed. And that didn't fulfill me. At the time, though, I didn't know how to fix that. And so I ended up going down a more business path, had my own business. And I would say the one thing that is again, I constantly am trying to work on is being brave, being bold, thinking big, living a big life. Decided, well, I'm gonna create a company. I'm gonna go into my own business. Now, some would say I didn't know any better. I didn't have anything holding me back, but I ended up using that business. I became a small payroll customer, and I pitched an idea to a corporation, a company called Paychecks. And long story short, they ended up buying me out. And what they did was they said, hey, do you want to come work for us and develop new products? And I was like, sure. I had no background in product development. I understood small businesses. I understood what their market was. Didn't have a formal marketing background, but I always have tried to look at what's the opportunity. And when I found myself afraid or starting to doubt my skill set, I would run things through my head that I grew up with, right? Or that I had learned to bring into my life, which is think big, give yourself permission to live a big life, be brave, be bold. So I pitched an idea and they brought me on and bought me out. And my very first assignment was to look into this World Wide Web thing. And at first I wasn't anxious about the assignment. I thought, well, that's not what I like, writing marketing and sales slicks. And my boss said, hey, I'm not asking if you feel like doing it. She said, I'm telling you, you need to do it. It's the best boss I ever had, because she could have passed that assignment in 1988, 89 to someone else. And because she forced it on me, so to speak, I fell in love with the internet. I was a marketing person who then kind of barged my way into IT, which was not very attractive to all the gentlemen my age at that time in IT. Who is this woman from marketing? Who does she think she is? What does she know? She doesn't understand. But I formed the first web tech group because I didn't know any different. I didn't know that I didn't have the skills to do that. And so all along, I've tried to use my career in that manner and find a way to succeed regardless of who was around me, succeed regardless of some of the negative or pushback that I received. There was a point in my career where I was told, you need to be less direct. You need to be less pushy. You're moving too fast, too forward with your ideas. And there was a period of time where I started to try to compile that into my makeup. How could I be more tentative is what I was told. Be more tentative. Instead of saying, hey, I got a great idea, say, I have this idea. I kind of think it's good. What do you think? And see if you can get buy-in from others before you say it's a good idea. And I'll be frank, I did that a couple of years and I was miserable because I was winding myself into someone I wasn't, because I did have a good idea. And if you don't like it, that's okay if you don't like my idea, because sometimes by the time I get to the end of my idea, I think, oh, I don't like it either, because I think out loud and I think with energy and passion. So I found myself rethinking, is that how I want to work? Is this the methodology that fed my needs? And was I trying to be someone that I'm really not? I'm not a tentative person. And there's strength in the group for having all different kinds of people. I had a lot of people around me that were very analytical, that would help take what might be a loose idea of mine and give it legs or help us set it aside. And so I started to have faith in that and realized I was being told to sort of simmer down. I mean, people are never surprised to hear I'm the bossy older sister because of that. But I found that once I found myself within that is, I believe, when really great things really began to happen for me. I started to go after the big things in life and say, you know, most of us as women often think of the 10 things that are required. And if I have 9 of them, but I don't have the last 10th one, I'm not gonna toot my horn. And I found I had to switch that up. I had to have possibilities thinking. I could do that. Think about it. I started a web tech group. I didn't know anything about web technology, but actually nobody did. And so it isn't just about good ideas. It isn't just about your skill. It's about your passion and your belief in yourself. And, you know, one of the things when we looked at we talked about the challenges that we all face, sometimes it is that, particularly if you're in an environment that is very dominated by one type of group, right? And so I think as women, I have found a lot of my passion now resides in coaching other women, working with other women and other women's student groups in technology, like at RIT, women in engineering, women in science, women in IT, women in information security. Why are those numbers plateauing? Why are they going down? It's the environment. It's the atmosphere. We did a session for our students about being superheroes, about physically finding a way to feel powerful, because we tend not to often for a variety of different reasons. And I have found that the more we can encourage each other to have strength, to take up space, to speak with conviction, to support each other, the more good ideas come on the table, versus the ones that kind of get held back because people feel unsure or don't want to be dismissed or overrun in that scenario. And a lot has been written about it. There's a million things you could read about it, but it's about practicing it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the things we do with our students is, you know, strike the warrior pose in yoga, and you feel like you could kick somebody right across their face, right? Because it is a powerful stance if you've ever done it. And so a way to grab power for yourself is to almost mentally strike that, right?
Yeah.
Before you go into a conversation where the stakes are high or the emotions are high, how can you feel more powerful and more in control of what you say, how you do it, and have a good outcome at the end that nobody's damaged in? And I'm not saying you just overcompromise, but sometimes you lead, and you lead with conviction, and you lead with the spirit of, I want to be heard. I'm going to be heard. I'm going to be respectful, but I am going to be here. And I feel like that is something that is starting to is missing now from some of our students that are emerging. They look fearfully at the equation and they say, I don't want that. I don't want to have negative comments hurled at me through social media. I have a niece who's Asian and who's a pilot. And she had a really rough time in college, especially her first 2 years. Things that were said to her that were so demeaning. And I just got off the phone with her this week. She has a big interview with a huge airline. It's been a few years. I said to her, Katie, you need to develop a thicker skin and feel that power from within. You're not gonna truly in a meeting or in a hangar jump into a warrior pose, but bring that upon yourself. And we just had this conversation where she said, I can't tell you how much that has served me well inside to find that spot of confidence or find that ability to be able to do that. And so I think for me, the journey has brought me, now that I work in higher education, and how do I give back? How do I help this next generation of leaders? How do we help demonstrate for women, all backgrounds, all socioeconomic groups? Because if you put a woman inside a computer, she's managed for life relative to finances versus a customer service role that isn't going to pay in the same breath. And so how do we enable that to happen for women of all these different groups? Sometimes it's working from within to the outside, as well as coaching for positions and resumes and all of those things. We do here in Rochester, Women in Technology. We do a number of, breakfast and learns. We usually get 40, 50, 60 people. When we do negotiating salaries, we do it 3 times because we can't fit everybody in the room. And if you, from my perspective, you take one thing away, part of the power is knowing your value. And you're the sum, that book that you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Well, you're really the sum of the 6th, and one of them is yourself.
Yeah.
You have an impact on who you are and what you say. And if you understand and learn how to really negotiate for a role or for what you need in a role or for salary, you bring that into all those aspects.
Yeah.
And so I leave you that as my advice.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeanne. Cindy, do you want to say a little more about your background and some of these kinds of challenges and how you overcame them? Jeanne gave us a lot of really great advice and stories that I imagine resonated with all of us.
Yeah, so my path was very different. I did not have the confidence that was just described, I would say, at all. So I really came through the technical track. I graduated in statistics and business, and I immediately went to work for Novell. And I went to work for Novell as a statistical quality control analyst when they have hardware. And after being in that job for 6 months, they stopped doing hardware and my job went away. And so they gave me opportunity to be the supervisor over all of their online support, which included CompuServe at the time and listserv, basically. And that I will say that Novell, I'm so grateful for that company for so many reasons, but they invested in me. I was a manager at 22, and they really taught me how to do all of the skills of management, which have served me so well over the course of my career. From there, I was a trailing academic spouse for over 20 years. So I would trail behind my ex-husband now, and I would go from place to place, and I would get into a new position because of my technical skills. And within 6 months or so, I would be promoted into a management position. And I think that this is what I will say that I really learned over the course of that. I really was never concerned about whether I was the only woman in the room. And I was a system engineer for WordPerfect and then Novell. And so I was the only woman in the room. I was the only system engineer nationwide for WordPerfect. It didn't matter. For me, it was about, am I really adding value? Am I making a difference? And what is the informal organization that I'm coming into? And how do I navigate that so that I become part of the informal organization in any place that I work? And what I mean by that, the informal organization is how things get done at a company. And if you pay attention to who's getting things done and you become part of that fabric, then not only is it fun, you also become really effective. And then I think the last thing that I will say is that I have fundamentally changed how I manage and how I lead at the core. And that is based on a very, I guess, focused concentration on how do I best become the leader that I want, and really honing in on what gives me joy and why am I doing what I'm doing. And I had this amazing executive coach, and she would tell me, she would ask me, are you acting in fear or freedom? And for me, the fear was I didn't want to look bad and I didn't want to fail. And it was about those two things. And it would send me into tailspins of self-doubt and all sorts of things. But when I act in freedom, it's because I'm focused on others and what I'm bringing to other people and the value that we are bringing to the organization, to the people we work with. And that gives me energy. It also gives me courage. And it gives me the ability to really move forward in powerful and really fun ways. So that's all I will say.
That's great. That's great. I'm resonating with so much that both of you have said so far. I know that'll be true from the other stories as well. Anne, you want to pick up the thread here?
Sure, happy to. It's great how we come from different backgrounds and different styles and all succeeded in our own authentic way. Like Cindy, I did not come from a background of confidence or from a healthy family of origin. Well, Cindy didn't mention that part, but I didn't come from a healthy family of origin, but I learned at a young age how to, I guess, live through defiance and independence, and how to manage the people around me to maintain equilibrium. And after years in tech that I fell into, I'm the only person in the world that got a job at Microsoft because I had a German degree, but I did. And I went from there to consulting before I entered higher ed. And when I started in my higher ed career, it was the first time that I had encountered resistance because I was female, and people flat out telling me I didn't belong there. They didn't want me there, that I could never succeed, that I was accused of being ambitious. Apparently that was a bad thing in that environment. And I just said, well, I said things And I just kept going and said, I'm just going to maximize my potential. I don't know where it's going to take me. And I'm not worried about where it's going to take me. And just when I see an opportunity, I'm going to leverage it and do the best that I can. And like Cindy said, also about the fabric of getting things done, I had a knack for getting things done one way or another. And I went from that environment to a different environment where I had a knack for getting things done. And again, I had people flat out telling me, you can never be a CIO. And for whatever reasons they said that, I don't know, but here I am to say without apology, here I am, which is a euphemism for saying, well, up yours, I made it. So I encourage people, look for mentors in your life, but also look for anti-mentors, because a lot of my motivation was to prove other people wrong. And I did it my own way. And now I am able to fight not for myself, but for the people that I serve, the people on my team. And that's what motivates me, is to take care of them and get things done for them. And it's a lot more comfortable rather than thinking in terms of fighting for myself. And I'm not always fighting. I'm navigating, I'm negotiating, but I know where my line is, because I know where I'm going to take a stand when it comes to taking care of the people that I serve. And that's what has kept me going. I came up through technical communications. I was a technical writer. I was a proofreader. I took on project management. I took on telephone management. I took on procurement. I took on program management, portfolio management. I ended up getting my doctorate in higher education administration, and just leveraged that to the best that I could. But I never planned it. When I write a memoir, it's going to be called The Accidental Strategist. I never planned anything. I just sort of stumbled my way through it. And after I had made, accidental moves, I'm like, oh, actually, that was pretty strategic. But I didn't figure that out until afterwards. So don't be afraid of not having a plan. Don't be afraid of stumbling your way through it. You can still be really successful just taking the opportunities as they come. And that's how I got here. And I really still can't explain how I got here, but I'm here and I'm doing it my way, and I'm not afraid to do it my way. And that's sort of my lesson and what I'd like to share with everyone here.
Oh, thank you. That very, very, very inspiring. And all three of you have spoken to this what I would call authenticity, about being yourself, and that's where a lot of your power comes from. Sue.
Well, I'm a little bit of a combination of all of the past three, I think. I was a math major in college, and as one, I was the only female. And then when I went to work at Hewlett Packard, I worked on scientific computers, and I was the only female. And honestly, I never had a female boss until I came here 7 years ago. And so I really did learn to live and work in a really pretty male-dominated world. And I had to really, when I did come here, the executive leadership, more than half were female. And I had to really learn how to work in a little bit different environment than I had before. But I got to say, I've had some really awesome mentors along the way, starting with my own father and going, Laurie's husband, President McRobbie from IU, was very, very supportive of me and other women. And I worked with Laurie on women in technology and STEM. And so I've had just these really great mentors along the way that have taken me under their wing and said, hey, come over here and come over here. Let me coach you a little bit. Let me give you those leadership skills. Let me give you a stretch assignment, which I loved. And so, like Cindy, I also was pretty young when I got put into a management position, and I decided I really liked it. I really liked having people work for me. And I think I'm not really in technology because of technology. I'm in this position because I love people. And it just so happens we work with technology, and that's innovative and fun. So, keeps me busy and out of trouble. But, I think there's just been a lot of really helpful people along the way. And I too suggest you don't have to have a formal mentor anyway, just watch them and grow from them. I had an instance that happened when I was at Hewlett Packard and on this all male team except me. And it was too, right when it was before actually the internet. And it was when we were trying to get different vendors' computers to talk to each other, to communicate. So IBM, Dell, HP, others. And at the time, they didn't. Each had their own network. And so we had an assignment in Kokomo, Indiana, to go to GM and try to make these things all work together. And guess what? None of the guys wanted to go to Kokomo, Indiana. Well, it's not the paradise of the world, but it's also not a bad place. And I said, I'll do it. And so they're like, yay, you go do it. And then when we got it to work, it really wasn't well, but when we got it to work, Hewlett Packard put me on this worldwide video to tell the world basically how we did it. And what did the guy say? Why did she get to do it? Well, she got to do it because she did the work. And I think that's really what I want to leave you with in a piece of advice. And I'll come back to this in a little bit, but take the chances, take your opportunities, jump in there, and good things just seem to happen when you do.
It's a great story. It's a great story. I have seen that dynamic play out, and I'm sure we all have. Any other comments any of you want to share before we have a sort of another topic to move to, but anything else that comes to mind as you listen to each other talk? Well, I want to kind of plunge into sort of where we started with this, which is, where we are right now in this kind of this moment when we're all very conscious of the way the pandemic has affected our working lives and our personal lives, and in particular how the larger issues of diversity, inclusion, and equity are playing out for you personally, and how they play out in your organizations. I know we have all seen a lot about the ways in which the pandemic has disproportionately negatively affected women in certain industries, certainly, and people of color. And so we're at this moment of there being, double, triple, quadruple whammies going on. And I'm curious personally, and I imagine others are too, to hear you all comment on this, and just what you're seeing in as I say, in your own workforces with respect to where people are as they think about how to navigate the world that we are now living in. And I'm just going to toss that out. Any of you who want to jump in, jump in.
I'll go ahead and start it off, Laurie. In terms of the pandemic, it's been nothing but good for me. I apologize to all the people for whom it has been a very big struggle. It's just made my life easier in ways. I can work from home, I can work remote now. I always could, but people did not believe that. And so changing the perception in society around that has been helpful. And that's just a logistical thing. I hope that the pandemic, that we learn more lessons from that going forward than just, oh, now we can work remotely. I hope that we see some societal shifts, and particularly for women and people of color entering new workforces. I think one of the reasons that I've heard about why people are not jumping back into the workforce as quickly as one might have thought, partly because they're rethinking their careers or their work-life balance, or or anything else. And I do hope that more people of color and women do enter different career fields. In terms of what can we do to help that along, I think we have to do what we're doing here, is let women know it's fine. It's not hard. Yeah, sure, you're going to have some people resisting you, and well, screw them. Just do it anyway. It's okay. And you're going to have resistance no matter what you do, no matter where you go. Pick a field that you like. And I love what Sue said, that I work with people, and I'm just happen to be in technology. It's innovative, it's fun, it changes all the time. I get bored easily. So it's a good field for me, only because I get bored easily, not because I have any technical ability whatsoever. I don't. And at the CIO level, I think having technical expertise is more of a liability than it is a benefit or an advantage. I need to have the ability to decipher what people are saying and have enough knowledge that they can't blow smoke at me. But it's more about knowing how to read people, build relationships, help people, than it has anything to do with technology. And I wish we could get that through to people, because from the outside of the industry, it looks like you've got to be an engineer, you've got to have all of this, you've got to know math. I can't do math. I can do Excel, but I can't do math. I can't do math in my head at all. And it's fine. I don't need that to be in this field. So I wish we could help people see from the outside the diversity of opportunity and career pathways in this industry that do not require any kind of STEM background or capability whatsoever. I have a German degree, and I did just fine. It was actually very helpful in some ways. So that's what I would throw out there in terms of where we're at in today's society and what I'd like to see.
Yeah.
I'll jump in here if you don't mind. So I think that the pandemic was uneven in how it treated people. And where I heard the most pain coming from people who had young children at home. It was really painful for people who had young children at home. And oftentimes a disproportionate amount of the work fell to the women who were trying to take care of a full-time job and getting their kids schooled and taking care of and all those sorts of things. And I think particularly where you had a really large impact on the childcare, and the amount of childcare that was available really went down in the pandemic, and it hasn't really come back up. And so that is something that we have to be really aware of and paying attention to. I mean, it's not just for the women, it's also for the young fathers too. They also experienced similar things. So it really was for people who have young children at home. It was much more difficult. I will also say that people adjusted, and people adjusted to this new norm, and people like what they have. So, and so I think one of the interesting things, and something that is already impacting Ohio State and everyone who I talk to, every peer, is the flexibility to work from anywhere means that for higher education, we are facing much tougher competition for our skilled workforce, who really have, and it is much harder to get our workforce tied to the mission, because they are not on campus seeing the students, which gave them energy and purpose and why they love being at a higher ed institution. And so this advantage of being at home has in some ways stripped a huge advantage we had in the workforce with keeping people here in higher ed. And so I think our challenge right now, and it's not just a challenge for higher ed, I think it's a challenge for everyone, is how do we create meaningful connections to what we do and meaningful connections to each other and our teams. I'm onboarding in the middle of a pandemic at a new institution, right? And at the tail end of it. So I am doing a lot in person, and I'm meeting a lot in person. But I know a lot of people who in the middle of a pandemic moved to a place and they've never met anyone they work for in person. And that's not just going to be a pandemic thing anymore. It's going to be the norm in how we work. And so we need to really think of how do we support each other? How do we support, how do we as women get the support that we need, create the boundaries that we need in order to be successful in whatever stage of life we are in. And I'm an empty nester. I don't have grandkids. I can donate, I can focus all my attention and time on work, but that's not true of everyone. And I think we need to be very conscious of where everyone is in their own life, as well as their, personal as well as work life.
Yeah. That's really great. I noticed there's a comment in the chat that I think is people will recognize here from if they've changed roles during the pandemic, which is just how hard it is to integrate into a new work culture when you're doing it remotely. And I think it really brings home the importance of those face-to-face interactions. Jeanne, you wanted to jump in.
I think I agree with everything that's been said. And one of the dimensions I'm trying to bring forward in my institution, and I think all of us as leaders, is work for tomorrow is forever changed. Whether you have small children or you don't, or elderly parents, or you're at home, or you're with roommates, or you have 3 luxury homes, it's forever changed. So how do we create that engagement? Most of us did well because we knew each other before we went out on the pandemic. Now, as we onboard new people like Cindy or other people that are coming on, how do you create those moments of engagement? While it's not ideal, and while I can't sit in my office and watch classes change at 9:50 in the morning, what is we are starting to see emerge a little bit is Zoom in some ways levels the playing field.
Yeah.
Everybody takes up the same space. Everybody can raise their hand. There are some folks that have been marginalized in some manner for different reasons that have actually found Zoom as a way to find their voice. Now, somebody else could just keep talking over them, but as leaders, we have to learn a new way to work, a new way to facilitate a meeting, a new way to ask people to engage through the cameras or some occasional on-campus or in-person events. One of the things I think we should all try to examine too, that I think makes work overall more family friendly for everyone, is it's the work week, not the work day or the work hour. I keep trying to reiterate to people, go take your dog on a 2-hour walk, go read at your kid's kindergarten, go take care of your mom at the nursing home and bring her a pot roast. Get your work done over the course of a week. IT people, for the most part, are married to their disciplines. They're dedicated. They do go above and beyond. And that freedom of flexibility is attractive to people if they can manage that. And most people can, not all, but most people can. And we as leaders have to find those touch points to make it humanistic or interconnected. And I had a conversation with a handful of people who said, I actually feel more represented in a Zoom meeting because I could be seen and I have the same footing as everybody else. Now, how do I explore that further is something I'm trying to figure out. So I think hopefully this new work week will emerge.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well. I've heard from both students, female students in classes, that they feel like they have an ability to participate in ways they couldn't before, and also from female scientists, same sort of thing. That leveling the playing field is a benefit that's come out of this remote environment. Sue, you want to?
Yeah, I'm going to take a little different take on this. And like Cindy, I am so glad I didn't have young children at home during this pandemic. I'm not sure I would have gotten through it very well, but I do think that right now, as women, you have some opportunities that it may be an advantage to be a woman now. And I mean, if you start to think about it, start to look at the leadership positions that are being filled by women and people of color. Indiana University is one. The new president is female. I just saw this morning that Northwestern University has a new female president as well. And so I think it could be an advantage right now. But the other part is, at least in my staff, and I don't know about all of you, but we are down about 12% because of recruitment. And many of those are the diverse employees. Those are the ones that are getting hired, which doesn't help my mission to hire diverse employees, but there is some advantage out there, I think, right now to have some diversity and be able to to get a job because of that. But like I said, I don't like the fact that they're attracting my diverse candidates. So it's just a little bit different position on where we are.
Yeah, no, I think that that's really true. In fact, I was going to just kind of call out a kind of obvious thing about our panel today, which is, we're touching on some issues that have to do with communities of color and people of color, and which none of us, at least, well, you can tell on the surface, none of us are. And it's not. I just wanted to say that has more to do with the fact that the folks that we would like to have had participate, who represent those communities, couldn't make it today. But I think it is this issue that we're still not seeing a pool that's diverse enough in many cases. But to Sue's point, I think we're coming into a time when people are getting even more serious and intentional about digging, looking in areas where maybe they haven't before, and trying to pull some of those individuals forward. And then, of course, supporting them with inclusive work cultures. And, that touches on a lot of the things we've been talking about here. Other comments on this before we move into Q&A. You've all been tossing out a lot of just fantastic advice. And I know we've been also talking about some things in the chat as well, which is wonderful. We're kind of all talking about this. Any other comments on issues of diversity in the workforce and sort of where you think we are now? Let me just make get a couple of comments that were in the chat, or I guess they're questions. And some of them have already been addressed, but it might be worth speaking to it here. There was a point about, or question about, how each of you has dealt with the pressure to be likable. And Jeanne, you kind of indirectly touched on this, people telling you not to be so pushy. I mean, how many people have been, it's the bossy label that seems to get given to women more. Maybe people who were oldest siblings get that. Certainly, I had an older sister. I called her bossy all the time, and I didn't mean it nicely. But I think that is a really serious point. And I wondered if any of you wanted to say more about it. And you did respond. It was a great response in the chat.
Yeah, I'll just follow up on that, Laurie. I definitely was challenged by male counterparts because of being a female leader. They didn't think that I should be taking charge or acting authoritatively or even expressing my opinion with confidence. I was accused of that once too. It was a great environment. I was in there for a while, but it taught me a lot. And what I tell people is don't focus on yourself and whether you're likable. Focus on the people around you and on liking them and supporting them and drawing out their likability. And then you're not so worried about it. And I think that's just good advice. If you're feeling insecure, if you're feeling nervous at all, focus on the people around you and making them feel comfortable. And that's all anybody cares about, is whether they feel right. So they're not thinking about you as much as you're thinking about you. Everybody's more preoccupied with thinking about themselves. So that's one strategy that I offer for getting over that likability hump. But I definitely was challenged by that in my career as well.
I think that at the end of the day, and you saw it in the chat, and I think you heard it through all of our presentations, at the end of the day, regardless of our style and our backgrounds and our path, there's a common thread of getting things done.
Yeah.
And if you think about getting things done, it's about listening to people. You can't get things done on your own. You don't have to be, a mat for other people and try to overcompromise everything in order to be a pleaser, but you have to have enough likability to engage with people and really listen to what they're saying, and then be able to step back and bring some of that together. But I will say, when there are wrench is thrown into your path, it is up to all of us to make them teachable moments, to call them out. It doesn't have to be in an obnoxious manner, but in a way, I had something happen to me some years ago where I was asked to chair a large search. And I think the person who brought it to me, he couldn't wait to ask me to do it because I had a reputation for getting things done. And I had a good reputation for talent acquisition. And I paused and I said to him, because inside I was annoyed. I thought, how do they know I don't want to apply for this position? And why are they asking me to chair the search? Because I was the only senior level woman on the team. And so I calmed I brought myself down to a little bit more of a nicer demeanor and said, how do you know I don't want to apply for that position? You asking me to chair it is sending a signal to me that I'm not sure is what I would have thought I would have heard. And that you could have heard a pin drop. It was a teachable moment. And I didn't have to be obnoxious to them about it, but I also wanted to be clear that I know that this individual, these two were forever changed by that. Before they asked some other woman to do a job on something, that they would think through what is the implication of that. And so I use that for myself to say, every time I say something, what am I leaving behind unintentionally in that conversation to a junior associate or whatever. So these are teachable moments. When they happen, find a gracious and good way to make them teachable moments, because it'll help the next 10 or 20 people who engage in that. And it makes us more aware.
For sure.
And I would add to that too, that it's really to be authentic and not just likable. Being likable is a good thing. I mean, it usually helps if people do like you. But I think if you be authentic and you really are looking out toward the mission of the university, you're doing things because it's the right thing to do, and you're passionate about it, then people will come along. I will say it does help as you go up the ladder and as you get older, your voice is listened to a little bit more, or that's been my experience. So I think, when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, to get listened to, I had to pretty much jump up and down, scream and yell in order to get somebody to listen to me. And, but as you progress in your career and your age, you learn how to do it better, or people just start to respect you a little bit more. So, it does, sometimes aging is a good thing. Not always.
Yeah. No, I think I may be older than everybody here. That's certainly been my experience, and partly you just, after a while, you just don't care about the same small stuff that you did when you were younger, and that helps. But it's the classic thing of just keeping at it. Jeanne spoke to this about just focusing on the work and getting it done. And that becomes your way forward. And the issue of likability, I think too, is you obviously don't want to be mean, and that doesn't typically work either. But there's a lot of room for you to do things that don't involve that. I'm gonna
want to add one more thing to that, Laurie. One thing that helped me early on in my career, I had a mentor, a person who said to me, learn some word tracks, meaning prepare for these kinds of, what's a nice way to interrupt, or what's a nice way to say, well, that's not what I said, or I was thinking this, and that really helped me quite a bit, because I was somebody who in my younger days spoke sometimes before I thought, and this allowed me to think and then have them kind of in my pocket. And so if that is something that causes you stress going into a certain meeting or an interaction with someone, put down a few word tracks. They really make you feel good.
That's a great suggestion, Jeanne. That's really, because inevitably we all have to use those. I'm going to kind of move more into the Q&A, and there's actually a great question. Thank you, Tina, because I did also want to get to the question about mentoring, and have each of you just say a few words about what you have gotten out of the mentoring relationship as a mentor, because I think that's a very, very important way to look at it. Any of you want to take that one?
I mean, I think there's some answers in there. I learn as much as they do. And I mean, sometimes it's just reminding myself of something because of what the mentee asked. And it's like, oh yeah, I should do this a little differently, or, I do tell my mentees though, that they will have to do more work than I do. So to set the example and set the baseline, because a lot of them just want you to come in and tell them what to do. And it's like, no, you're going to do more work. And so, but I think I always learn something from everybody I've mentored.
I'll just add that, along those same lines is, if you really want to learn how to do something well, teach it to someone else. So so one of the things I get so much about mentoring others and really just teaching leadership generally is that when you have to articulate it, it's that conscious knowing instead of unconsciously doing. You're actually consciously stepping back and saying, why do I do what I do, and why am I unsuccessful or successful in that? And it helps you to be really self-reflective for yourself as you're really trying to teach someone. And I view the relationships and even my direct report relationships as a coaching relationship. This isn't about being a mentor, it's about being a coach, which is helping the person find their own path. Because my path is not going to be the same path that anyone else is going to be successful. And so it goes back to that authenticity and being your best version of yourself, not a mirror or try to mimic other people. You're trying to be the best version of yourself.
Yeah, and to the point about mentoring too, I think we were all talking about this before the session started, which is that we very much view this conversation today as something that we hope can continue with others of you out there. You'll see some of I think all our panelists have their email addresses in their names, and we can certainly, internet too, can certainly facilitate putting you in touch with people. But I think, I've been so struck by over my career of the importance of these connections to other people across the country, that is really the thing that allows opportunity to come your way, as well as get that kind of feedback that you need to feel ready to take advantage of those opportunities. So we're building a network here, we're expressing a network here, and we want to make sure that continues. We're pretty close to the end of our session here. Maybe 15, 30-second last words of advice from each of you.
Sure,
Be
Laurie,
bold,
I'll
be brave.
jump in. I think I hit my unmute button first. Sorry, everybody. My favorite advice to give to everybody in the world is ask questions. It is the best skill in the world. Just phrase your statement as a question. It buys you time. It honors the other person. It doesn't make a direct statement, and you learn more. And before you start speaking and stating opinions, make sure you have asked as many questions as you can. It's a great strategy for getting through any situation.
Right. Cindy?
I would say meditate. I wish I would have done it 20 years ago. You learn how to master your own mind.
Sue or Jeanne?
Be brave. Be very brave. You'll never regret it.
And just take a risk. Find something, do it. Don't need permission.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you all. We could keep going all afternoon. I want to thank all of our panelists and all of you out there for asking such great questions, putting such great comments, and mentoring each other in the chat. That was really fabulous to see. Quick promo for an upcoming talk, also part of Tech Extra. On Thursday, I think it's at 1 o'clock Eastern, a woman named Kate Darling from MIT Media Lab will be speaking on robots, answering all your questions. So please tune in for that. And we'll look forward to the next one of these, which I think there will be. Thank you all again to everyone for being with us this afternoon.